Genetically modified foods were first put on the market in the early 1990s. Typically, genetically modified foods were transgenic plants, products such as soybean, corn, canola, and cottonseed oil. In order to get a general opinion of genetically modified products, we interviewed many shoppers.
Do you know what genetically modified foods are?
Anything pumped with steroids. Steroids?
Okay, the genetically modified foods are those foods who are being altered, not following the natural way of either growing or harvesting.
Sort of. You don't read very much about a really complete explanation about them, but they do something in order to make them stronger, get more product out of it, make it less resistant to pests, is all I've heard about it.
I try not to buy them.
Do you pay attention to whether the food you buy is genetically modified?
I'm not terribly concerned.
Not so much as the antibiotic stuff. As far as animals, I don't think I see that in the package.
Do you ever see labels in supermarkets that would tell you that they are GMO or non-GMO?
I haven't really looked for it, but no, I haven't really come across anything like that.
This is what it might look like if everything was labeled genetically modified. Do you check the ingredients on the labels?
Do pay attention to the foods and the labeling.
But if you just kind of know what you're looking for, then you usually read it pretty easily.
What do you think about genetically modified food?
We just don't know long-term things, and the world made it one way, and now we're changing it. Which, when you're talking about a growing organism, I suppose we don't even know what that could be.
GM crops can be produced to be pest resistant. They are given a genetic ability to produce Bt, a toxin found in soil bacterium that repels certain insects. They can also be produced to be herbicide resistant. This means farmers can spray to kill weeds without affecting crops. GM varieties of pest-protected and herbicide-tolerant crops have resulted in reductions in chemical use, boosted yields, and saved growers tens of millions of dollars. The future for GM crops is full of potential. Cold-tolerant and drought-resistant crops could ensure seasonal harvests. Additional vitamins and minerals could boost nutritional values. GM crops could improve economic, health, and social benefits for populations dependent on agriculture in developing countries.
One concern with the production of GM crops is the risk of allergic reactions associated with the transfer of genes. If a protein from one food is incorporated into another, dangerous reactions could result in people with allergies. Another concern with the use of GM crops is the possible transfer of antibiotic resistance. GM crops are created using marker genes for resistance to certain antibiotics in the development of the crop. These genes could confer antibiotic resistance to humans, and the consumption of GM foods could change the makeup of human digestive systems, increase the risk of infections which are resistant to antibiotics.
Through gene flow or gene escape, genes from GM crops can pass on to other members of the same species or other species. The favorable genetic alterations are selected for future generations, and the GMO varietals eventually come to make up a greater proportion of the total population of the given species. The increased use of GM crops could also hasten the evolution of pests resistant to these defenses conferred by the implanted genes. The result would be a continually increasing proportion of the species population showing lessened susceptibility, in this case to the beneficial protection of genetic modifications. Also, herbicide-resistant genes could transfer from the crops to the weeds, creating herbicide-resistant superweeds. To prevent such resistance, the EPA requires farmers to plant 20% of their fields with non-GM crop to serve as a refuge for insects.
Biotechnology research is predominantly carried out by the private sector, and there are concerns about market dominance by a few powerful companies. Many new plant genetic technologies and genetically modified plants have been patented, and patent infringement is a big concern in agribusiness. Consumer advocates are concerned that patenting these new seed varieties could raise the prices of seeds so high that small farmers in third world countries would not be able to afford seeds for GM crops.
To purchase GM seeds, a customer must sign an agreement that limits what can be done with them. These agreements are deemed necessary to protect the company's intellectual property and prevent the duplication of genetic advancements that make the seed unique. However, agri-tech companies take it a step further, including in the agreement that it is forbidden to use seeds for any independent research. Under the threat of litigation, scientists cannot test a seed to explore different conditions under which it thrives, compare seeds from various companies, and cannot examine unintended environmental side effects of genetically modified plants.
One way to combat the possible patent infringement is to introduce a terminator or suicide gene into GM plants. These plants would be viable for only one growing season and produce sterile seeds that do not germinate. Farmers would have to buy a new batch of GM seeds every year, which would be disastrous to growers in third world countries who cannot afford an annual seed payment and traditionally set aside a portion of their crop in seeds for planting next year. There are long-term implications of the use of GMOs. The world's 6.8 billion people use land equal to the size of South America to grow food and raise livestock.
Demographers anticipate the world's population to grow to 9.5 billion by 2050, requiring additional arable land equal in size to the country of Brazil if agricultural practices were to remain as they are. This much additional land does not exist, indicating that agricultural practices have to change unless we want to risk facing a major shortage of food and the economic implications thereof. Increasing food prices could force poor consumers out of the market and lead to armed conflict over arable land and the destruction of forests and other protected lands that are necessary for our survival on the planet as well.
If GMOs aren't so bad, then why don't most consumers know what they're eating? According to the FDA, GM foods are not inherently dangerous and are substantially equivalent to conventionally grown foods. The FDA does not consider the method of production to be meaningful information to be put on the label. The modification must have significant material change in the food product.
Numerous countries have adopted GM-derived varieties of crops. These include developed and developing nations. Even as there is understandable uncertainty in selected countries, the biotechnology agricultural age is occurring. The yield and cost differences that have been documented are the reason. When compared with minimal health risks, the economic, nutritional, and societal advantages of GM crops currently outweigh the need for stringent regulatory measures.
Don't tase me, bro. I'm an old man. I got a heart condition.
But what up with it, man? It's your boy O to the D, aka Knowledge General of the Jews. I'm doing this video, and I'm gonna call it More Facts About GMO Foods. And it's crazy, man. It's like first they started out with the splicing. Well, I mean, you gonna see the video, but with the splicing of the plants, you know, putting certain animal traits inside plants to make it to where they can last through winters and stuff like that and grow during droughts and all this other stuff. And what they doing is splicing. Like, y'all don't understand what splicing mean. Splicing is like they taking DNA from some other species and putting it into another species and making a totally different species. You get what I'm saying? and they started splicing the seeds up into the splicing the animals up into the seeds and making these seeds that adapt to the winter and stuff like animals do. Makes a whole new species, make them bigger. You know what I mean? Makes them, makes whatever they producing bigger, More wheat, more soy, more corn, more, you know what I'm saying? And they've done that with, they started out with plants, that's the soy, the corn, the wheat, the stuff like that. Then it went to the fruits. They got to doing the fruits like that. They spliced strawberries to where they can last in the wintertime and stuff like that. And then, allegedly, the first animal that they did was gonna be in the process of you eating on it, from what they actually saying that they're doing. I mean, which I already know they're probably doing more than just the fish, but you know what I'm saying. That one is out there. But the point is, now they done spliced a fish with another type of fish to make a new breed of salmon that's bigger, and they haven't really released them into the wild yet to find out what they do when they get out in the wild, when they start mating with other fish or start eating them. But the scientists, they like that they're sterile so they can't make kids or whatever. But I mean, you just never know with an incident like that. It ain't been studied, you know what I'm saying? So that's the first ones they done put out there that, people probably eating that they say they did. That ain't got nothing to do with all the stuff in the dark that they ain't telling you that they doing. You know what I'm saying? You gotta think about it. When the government tell you they doing one thing, they doing something totally worse. They doing something way worse than a little bit of something that they did. You know what I'm saying? That little bit of something that they did and they tell you about, this is just a little decoy to say, hey, we did a little something like that, but we ain't do it that bad. Then when they come out and say it was that bad, they didn't do it. So, Americans got a short length of thinking. Like, after 2 years, you can do it to them again. They won't remember. It's sad, but it's true. And, they haven't really studied the long term on that. But I'm gonna do what I do best. I'm finna take this scenario and take this incident that's going on in life and compare it to the Bible and compare it to what already happened, because there's nothing new under the sun. So everything that's happened on this earth doesn't happen before, maybe a couple times. Okay, but the Book of Enoch, people don't read it. You probably need to read it. The Book of Enoch talks about stuff like that. It talks about the animal splicing that the Nephilims was doing. It talks about all of the bad stuff that the Nephilims was doing that led up to the flood. Are you understanding what I'm saying? Led up to the flood. All of the stuff that the fallen angels was doing and all the corruption that was on this earth. It was documented. And what I'm telling you is, we're going through the same thing right now because the world is getting corrupted again. And then what happens after it get corrupted? You got it. It's not a flood, it's fire this time. It destroys the earth with fire. They got all these nuclear weapons. You're the man from it. But the gene splicing ain't good. Like, it's not gonna lead to nothing good. Yo, you think you can eat spliced food and think it's gonna make you healthy? The Lord made everything the way He made it, just right. It don't need no help. It don't need no artificial flavor. The nutrients and everything is in the stuff that He put here, not in the stuff we make. The stuff we make is killing it. And on the same note, while we got all these GMO products that's on the shelf, we got all this cancer. We got all this kid cancer. It's a lot of kids having cancer, man, and it's supposed to be Cancer Aware Month, and it's just like I'm aware that everybody is catching cancer, but why don't we have cancer? Why is it booming so bad? Research month, you know what I'm saying? Something like that, But let's research how everybody's catching cancer like this. Is it AIDS or something? Is it spread through coughing, saliva? Why is all these people catching cancer? Why is all these young kids catching cancer? You know, why is all these diabetes, fat people, and all this other stuff, why is it so high in America right now? That's what you need to research, and how to get it down, and how to stop it. And if it's from the GMOs, which we know is from the GMOs, take them out. We don't need GMOs.
History of food. For the first time, the government is considering whether to allow the sale of food from a genetically altered animal, the FDA taking it up today. A company has tinkered with the genetic material of salmon so the fish can grow faster and reach groceries sooner. Are eaters ready? Here's Lisa Stark.
It looks like any other salmon, but opponents call it frankenfish and hope to keep it off your dinner plate. Here's the difference. Both these fish are 18 months old, but the larger genetically engineered Aqua Advantage salmon grows twice as fast as the regular salmon.
This is the first genetically engineered animal that would be introduced to the food supply, so it's a big deal.
Atlantic salmon grows in fits and starts, but scientists found that adding genetic material from a Pacific salmon and an eel-like fish helps them grow round the clock.
This fish is indistinguishable from the traditional foods.
How can you say it's indistinguishable, though, when it clearly has a different genetic makeup than an Atlantic salmon?
But it tastes the same, it looks the same, and the biology is exactly the same.
FDA scientists today agreed.
Aqua Advantage salmon is Atlantic salmon, and food from Aqua Advantage salmon is as safe as food from other Atlantic salmon.
Still, critics claim more studies are needed on how the fish might affect humans and the environment. For instance, what happens if these altered fish somehow make it out into the wild? Would they breed with native salmon? Would they crowd out the wild fish? The company insists there are safeguards.
They're all sterile and they're raised in physically contained facilities.
But opponents say there's no guarantee all the fish will be sterile. And there's already one case study in how the best laid plans can go awry. Canola plants used to make canola oil were genetically engineered to be resistant to weed killer. The problem, their seeds have now migrated from the company farms, carried by the wind, and perhaps by trucks taking them to market. They're now growing on the roadsides of North Dakota. Scientists worry they may create a hard-to-kill superweed. As for the genetically altered salmon, one question still on the table: will folks eat it? And will they even know what they're eating? Because the FDA has to decide if the fish will even carry a special label. Lisa Stark, ABC News, Washington.
I'm a Jew, he a Jew, she a Jew, we some Jews. Wouldn't you like to be a Jew too? Only if you're in the bloodline.
Major investigation into GMOs following tumor study. This is Anthony Gucciardi out of naturalsociety.com. Following the release of a peer-reviewed piece of research linking the consumption of Monsanto's Roundup-containing GMO crops to tumors and organ damage, the French government is now calling for a health agency investigation, seeking to analyze the research and potentially ask European authorities to protect human health and abandon the use of GMO crops. France's agriculture minister and others are now sounding the alarm. And the interesting thing, of course, we've been covering this study for the past couple of days, is the fact that it's the first of its kind to monitor the effect of GMO crops on rats throughout the whole lifespan of the rats. So it took 4 months in this study for the tumors and the cancers to be noted to appear in the rats, which is interesting because all the previous studies that Monsanto has pointed to as evidence that GMO was safe only monitored the effect of these same crops on rats up to 90 days. So the very first study that goes beyond that 90-day period, which Monsanto kept pointing towards saying it's safe, is the first study to give us damning evidence of the fact that genetically engineered food kills. And it's evidence that eviscerates all these claims by Monsanto that it's supposedly safe, because they were all based on the previous 90-day rule, whereas this goes beyond it. And beyond that 90-day point is when the tumors appeared in the rats. So now France is launching this new investigation. Of course, they just decided to maintain the ban on a different type of Monsanto GMO maize. And basically, Monsanto's getting its butt kicked all over Europe. It's being strangled out of the European marketplace. And it's a massive victory for health freedom. The problem is that Monsanto is so dominant in America, thanks in part to the Obama administration, who made sure that all the former Monsanto executives got cushy, influential posts within the FDA. But the problem is that the GMO feed is still being exported from America to Europe and other countries around the world. It's being eaten by the livestock and then obviously passed on to humans. So that's why Prop 37, which we've covered before on InfoWars Nightly News, in California is more important than ever. This, of course, is the effort to force GMO companies, notably Monsanto, to label GMO food. And it really represents a pretty huge nail in the coffin of Monsanto's business model going forward. If this gets passed, then basically it could be the start of them going out of business, because once people know about the trash that's in their food, then they're going to stop buying it eventually. So again, it's positive news on the health front, and we really need to celebrate these victories when they do happen. Of course, in Europe also, earlier this week, we had naked X-ray body scanners being banned throughout Europe as dangerous to health. That was a major victory. And now Monsanto, also in Europe, is very much on the ropes, and we're winning. And on the subject of Prop 37 in California, here's Dennis Kucinich explaining why it is so important during a speech he gave in front of Congress.
In 1992, the Food and Drug Administration decided that genetically modified organisms were the functional equivalent of conventional foods. They arrived at this decision without testing GMOs for allergenicity, toxicity, antibiotic resistance, and functional characteristics. As a result, hundreds of millions of acres of GMO crops were planted in America without the knowledge or consent of the American people. No safety testing, no long-term health studies. The FDA has received over 1 million comments from citizens demanding labeling of GMOs. 90% of Americans agree. So why no labeling? I'll give you one reason: the influence and the corruption of the political process by Monsanto. Monsanto's been a prime mover in GMO technology, a multi-million-dollar GMO lobby here, and a major political contributor. There is a chance that Monsanto's grip will be broken in California, where a GMO labeling initiative is on the ballot. And here in Congress, my legislation, H.R. 3553, will provide for a national labeling bill. Americans have a right to know if their food is genetically engineered. It's time for labeling.
Alex Jones here with a message to fellow freedom lovers. The prognosis for the entire planetary economic system runs from bad to worse. The globalist model is to shut down societies and starve patriots out until they acquiesce to the global takeover. That's why we've assembled the most vital and important preparedness items at InfoWarsShop.com. These are items that I did research on, that I personally use. We've got the life straw, so you can turn fetid water into safe water anywhere you go. The K-Tor hand crank generator to charge up key equipment during power outages or out in the field. Strategic Relocation, 3rd edition by Joel Scalzo. When Disaster Strikes by Matthew Stein. ThyroSafe, used by Homeland Security to protect yourself during any radiological event. Hand crank shortwave AM/FM radios. Everything that we've researched and found to be the best is available at InfoWarsShop.com, and your purchase makes our InfoWar possible. We're getting prepared. Are you? InfoWarsShop.com.
Hi, I'm Roddy Iglesias. I'm a certified clinical nutritionist.
And I'm Peter McCarthy, a certified traditional naturopath.
And this is Wake Up America. Today we're going to talk about corporate influence on the nation's food supply. And we certainly know way too much about that, Peter, don't we? It's sort of a frightening situation.
Absolutely, Roddy. When you look at how much money is spent on producing processed food in this country, but not only that, marketing that food and making sure that that food is the predominant source of food on our shelves, it really is quite an impressive thing that these corporations together have been allowed to do.
Yeah, and of course we're also talking about corporations like Monsanto. And if you don't know who Monsanto is, tell us about Monsanto.
Well, Monsanto is the largest food and chemical supplier in the world, and they are responsible for much of the biotechnology research that has created genetically modified or GMO food of various types. And we know that they've made significant inroads through the FDA in being able to introduce that kind of food into our food supply. So much so that in many instances we really don't know whether or not a food product is made from a GMO source or not.
Now, actually, I spoke at the Texas Capitol on several occasions on GMO food. I also spoke in several Senate hearings back several years ago. They tried to put GMO under the category of organic because basically what they were saying is, by definition, organic is excluding pesticides and herbicides and chemical poisons and chemical fertilizers. So they wanted to include GMO, and they didn't want us to regulate and put on the packages that this was GMO or genetically modified food, because the manufacturers basically said, well, if you put this is GMO food, then it'll make it look like there's something wrong with the food.
Well, as a matter of fact, there is. Let me give you an example of what we're talking about. There are certain tomatoes. First of all, a normal tomato, when it's grown organically or in your backyard in a pot, if you choose to do so, basically one of the threats to it is a tomato weevil. But the biotechnologists have discovered that if they can splice in a gene that makes the tomato weevil sense that that tomato is actually part of one of its own predators, it's going to leave that tomato alone. The problem is that whenever you do that with any kind of genetically modified organism, you're creating problems with when it's ingested into the human body. And what I mean by that is that we're biologically created or made to sense when something is truly organic or if it's not. And if you're finding something that is kind of a mixture, if you will, of these substances, the body's immune system senses that as other and starts to attack. And ultimately, it can attack itself, and it can be the root cause of many autoimmune disorders where the body literally starts to destroy itself.
And let me just point out, when you say add these, as opposed to a hybrid, say you're doing a hybrid tomato or a hybrid strawberry, a hybrid is actually breeding one kind of tomato with another kind of tomato. But with genetically engineered, you're taking two different species. So for example, with the strawberry, strawberry has a tendency to have a vulnerability to frost. So what they have done is they have taken it's a fish in the North Atlantic that has a built-in sort of a freon in it. It's got a chemical that keeps it from freezing in North Atlantic waters. So what they've done is take the gene from that fish and they've spliced it in to the genes of the strawberry so that the strawberry is now not vulnerable to frost.
Yep.
Now, as you say, you know, we're sort of creating Frankenstein food, and by doing that, we really do not know how our body's immune system, which genetically has been sort of carried on from ancestor to ancestor to identify friend and foe. Now we're introducing new types of protein configurations in these new foods. And we are concerned, and there is a major concern. I know you in your practice and myself in my practice, I do a lot of allergy testing and food allergy sensitivities. And it is amazing the kinds of food sensitivities that's coming back in these lab reports. I mean, people are suddenly sensitive to lettuce or food sensitivities to very, very benign, what would be traditionally not considered hyperallergenic foods. They're becoming more sensitive and more allergic to these foods. And so we don't know where this is going to go. And it is big corp, such as companies such as Monsanto and companies like that, that are really pushing the political envelope to make sure that they have the upper hand in the industry.
Absolutely. And that brings up a really good point, because it's not just get the food on the shelf and maybe not reveal the sources that are involved. We're talking about a group of companies that are very active politically in terms of being able to not only make sure that those foods go to market, but also to make sure that nobody who has a contrary point of view about the health of those foods has an opportunity to be able to express that point of view. And you're really talking about what Roddy and I are all about in the political arena, which is freedom of choice of healthcare. And one of the biggest issues in the health freedom of choice arena is this freedom to choose who you go to see for nutritional counseling. Well, as Radia mentioned, she and I share philosophically a point of view that we ought to be using natural foods, foods that are grown organically, and to be able to get the most benefit from those foods, that's what they have to be. Unfortunately, that view isn't shared, and there are some very powerful organizations that are trying to quash dissenting points of view like ours. And one of the front organizations for big food is the American Dietetic Association. For years, they have been engaged in a campaign to establish what they call exclusionary licensure in every state in the union. Now, what does that mean? It means that if you want to get professional nutritional counseling, they want to make sure that the only people that you can go see is a registered dietitian. Now, who's backing that? Well, go to the American Dietetic Association website, Google American Dietetic Association, and look on their site map. They've got a corporate sponsorship section out there. And you've got companies like Pepsi, Coke, Kellogg's, Mars Candy. Now think about that for a moment. If they're successful in their campaign, what's that going to mean? It's going to mean that the standard of nutritional advice in this country is going to devolve to let's get healthy and have a soda and a candy bar.
And guess what, Peter? One of their other corporate sponsors is SoyJoy. Guess who's behind SoyJoy?
Oh, you think?
Monsanto.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to be talking a lot more about the Dietitians Association and a lot more about, corporate influence on the food industry. And we do want to make sure that we hear your comments and your feedback. We look forward to addressing anything that you may have, any questions that you have or comments. Be sure that you sign up to this YouTube Psyche Truth, and also visit our website, which is www.texashealthfreedom.com, and go find out what we're all about. If you're not from the state of Texas, that doesn't really matter. Visit our website anyway and see what you may be wanting to look at in your own state. Realize that right now the Dietitians Association has managed to monopolize over 30 states in the United States, and we're going to be talking about a lot more of that in the episodes to come. So stay with us. Thanks, Peter. And we will be back to talk to you more about some exciting topics.
Thanks.
We don't need GMO. We don't need them. With all the money that all these Americans blow daily, Come on, man. Y'all paying basketball players to run up and down the court. All of this money for what? You got starving people? How does that happen? How do these rappers go buy these expensive chains that's worth, I'm gonna say, about 100 regular people's whole life of living cool, not wealthy, just cool, you eating every day. You know, like they wipe their ass with that amount of money. So what I don't get is, with all that money, why can't y'all put it into planting more real crops? Put it into having research to take GMOs out and put the money in place of what we need to do. Stop all these dumb wars and save our money, and if you want to help the next country, let them plant their own stuff and not take it. Let's not kill and rape all their women and all the dudes there and kill them off and give them, you know what I'm saying? Let's give them real stuff. Don't give them GMO food and think they're going to live prosperous off that. You know, treat these other nations like you treat yourself, like the Bible say, follow them commandments. Really? You know? America follow them commandments. America follow them commandments, man. Things be a whole lot better. That's why the Lord wants us to follow the commandments. You treat the next person like you want to be treated. You know, and the U.S. don't do that. The U.S. treat other people like they want to treat them. That's why they don't want you to believe in the Ten Commandments. They don't want you to believe in the Old Testament. They don't want you to believe in the Bible, really. But if they can just get you on the New Testament, they can trick you all day long. They really can. You know? And y'all just gotta understand what it's like. Like I talked to my mama today, and like she said, man, you don't battle against flesh and blood, but against principles. Principalities and things like that. You know, so you're not battling against flesh. It's not, you know, it's not like there's just one set of bad people. You know what I'm saying? It's not just like one person that's bad that you're going against all your life. It's the spirits that's in them. You know what I'm saying? It's the demons that never left this world. They couldn't. They didn't have nowhere to go. You know? And the demons is in the Nephilims, for all y'all that don't know. For you slow people, and for the slow people that don't know what Nephilims is, Nephilims was the kids of the fallen angels. Okay? I just want to get that right with everybody. But eating GMO foods will curse you, and that's why we got this outbreak of cancer. Other than it's bad for you too, but God is cursing them because you're not supposed to eat GMO. We're supposed to eat what He put here for. You know, when you eat that, you get cursed. And what we do is we put this cursing all over America. You got all these people that's cursed by eating this food. You know, and it throws me off because GMO research has proved that it's bad for you and it kills you. GMO research has. So when you dealing with something like that, and then you in a place like America where GMOs is cool, you can eat that and kill yourself, but I had to throw this in there because this is the hottest topic around. If you smoke any kind of marijuana, you a bad person and they ready to throw you in jail, this and that, but you can eat GMO foods, serve GMO foods all day long and it's okay. But as soon as you smoke something, you're a bad person. You can feed your kids GMOs, it's okay. As long as you don't smoke that. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. America's backwards. And like I try to explain to my mama, there's no justification for saying that marijuana is bad. Okay, if you don't want to smoke it, that's cool. But there's no justification in saying it's bad. You can't sit up here and all these little flaws that they say marijuana get and they make you stupid and this and that, blah, 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 it's bad for you. It don't hold up in court. It don't hold water. If it did, then the government would have been all on it. Just like how they just did that research on GMOs with the rats, and they found out what happened. Don't y'all rocket scientists think they done already did researches with cannabis to find out what happened? And evidently didn't nothing happen because they ain't came out with no views talking about, oh, they caught cancer, oh, they was stupid, oh, they was this. It didn't come out with nothing. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you might have mild amnesia or whatever, you know, but think about it. Is it from that, or is it from the GMOs you eat, or is it from the chemtrails we sniffing in. Did y'all forget about the chemtrails that they spray over the world? So, I mean, you know, the point is, they demonize weed just because the government wants you to demonize it, not because it's bad. And y'all praise what you should be demonizing. I don't get it. You shouldn't even allow them to do GMO anything. Anything, but you do. All you Christians and other people, Bible freaks, I guess is what you... No. Not Bible freaks. I make it say religious freaks. Bible freaks is cool. Religious freaks. Not the religious freaks who just listen to the government and everything they say is right. You gotta understand some religious freaks. The government is not God's friend. They don't like God. Not the God of the Hebrews. Not the Almighty, the only true God. They don't like him. They like all them other minor guys, the sticks and stone guys. The people that's not really gods. That's what they into, you know, because they powered by the devil, by Lucifer. You don't get that yet. That's why these politicians and stuff go to these satanic meetings, and you can't expose satanism in America without them stopping you, because it's right there in the Capitol. It's right there on your dollar bill. They got all kind of Satan signs. It's right there in front of you. But you never know because your eyes is closed. But I'm signing out, man. It's your boy O to the D, dee-talk. Stop eating them GMO foods. I do this. Crazy Crew Entertainment, man. Crew or Die videos, and ain't nothing after that. You dig? You beezies?